Number 10. The Last Selfie. An unfortunate teenager spent her final moments trying to take a selfie on the top of a railway bridge in St. Petersburg, Russia. Before she could get the picture, she plunged 30 feet to her death. The teen's name was Xenia Ignatieva, and she was only 17 years young when she climbed onto the railway bridge with one goal: to take the ultimate selfie. But as she was setting herself up for the dramatic picture, Xenia fell to her death. She may have survived the 30-foot drop if she hadn't tried to save herself by desperately grabbing a hold of a live wire. The wire shot 1,500 volts through her body, essentially igniting her from the inside out. And this is tragic for all the obvious reasons and a few more. Xenia had purchased an expensive camera at the end of her summer job and was keen on becoming a professional photographer. It was her big passion in life. And unfortunately, her passion ultimately led to her death in a brazen attempt to get a risky selfie with her new camera. She also had a friend waiting down below that witnessed the entire incident. Her friend was absolutely mortified and will most likely never recover from seeing her best pal die right in front of her eyes. Martin Voigt, a psychologist from Munich University, had this to say about it: "We need to look at the deeper meaning of photos taken on railway tracks. The photo is not so much about the theme of it, but the component behind it. They play with danger." He also added that some people taking selfies are driven by the desire to take the best in the world, and as a result, they're becoming more and more extreme. So please, kids, the crazy selfies, they're just not worth it. Number 9. Amusement park disaster. A boy is dead after the worst amusement park ride ever. The accident happened at Adventureland Park in Iowa on a ride called the Raging River. And on that day that river was raging all right. A boat on the ride overturned with 6 passengers on it in such a dramatic crash that 3 of the passengers had to be rushed to hospital in near-death condition, while an 11-year-old boy named Michael Jaramillo was pronounced dead on sight from injuries he sustained. It must be embarrassing to take your kids to an amusement park only to have one of them die when your boat flips over. According to the park themselves, the ride had been inspected the day before and was found to be in perfect working condition. Nobody knows why the accident occurred. But it wasn't even the first fatality at this park. A park employee had died just a little while earlier on the exact same ride, only he'd been helping guests get out of the rafts at the end when he somehow tripped and fell into the conveyor belt, cracking open his skull and dying 4 days later from a major brain injury. We think maybe it's time for this ride to be shut down. Number 8. Dead in a dinosaur. A 39-year-old man that had been missing has recently been found dead inside the statue of a dinosaur in Spain. Prepare to be wowed because this has got to be one of the dumbest ways anyone has ever died. Out of respect for the family, the man has not been named, but the authorities have still given out most of the juicy details about his bizarre death. So here's what happened. The guy dropped his phone inside the hollow leg of a huge Stegosaurus statue in Barcelona. He was most likely climbing on the statue, or maybe his phone slipped under the dino's foot. We're a little fuzzy on those exact details. But the guy, who was by himself, obviously wanted his phone back, so he wriggled his way inside of the hollow statue. But it was easier getting in than getting out. Not only could he not reach his cell phone to call for help, but he couldn't get himself out of the leg. He ended up suffocating and dying inside the Stegosaurus. He was only discovered later because a father and son were walking by and happened to smell the overpowering stench of a decaying body. Firefighters had to cut the statue open to remove the smelly body, and the statue has since been removed from its place outside the Cubic building in Barcelona. Not to be insensitive, but that's why we have phone insurance, right? Why would you ever attempt something like this? Just let the phone go and get a different one. Let us know what you would do in the comment section down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Eaten alive by a crocodile. While taking an exotic river trip in India, a tourist from Britain found himself in quite the pickle. He was kidnapped by a hungry crocodile. The tourist's name was Ian Turton, and he was taking a river trip near Bangalore when the wild attack took place. The 497-mile-long Kaveri River runs across 3 of the southern Indian states. Ian was with a traveling companion and friend, a man named Michael Easton, and they were on the river in an inflatable dinghy. As you can probably imagine, an inflatable dinghy is not the best thing to be cruising down the river in, especially when there are crocodiles around. The men went missing somewhere along the river. Rescuers found the half-eaten body of Ian, who appeared to have tried to escape the crocodiles and then was literally ripped in half. Michael's body wasn't found, but the inflatable dinghy was discovered with puncture marks made by crocodile teeth. Michael is still missing, and he's assumed dead and eaten. Number 6. Stuck in a cave. People just keep getting stuck in weird places. When are they gonna learn? If it looks too small for you, it probably is, and if it looks too dangerous, it probably is. In Utah, a medical student and an experienced caver named John Jones, 26 years old, got trapped upside down in the famous Nutty Putty Cave for over 28 hours. This is a popular spelunking site roughly 80 miles from Salt Lake City. John was actually the first person to die inside the cave, according to the county sheriff's office. But how exactly did John Jones get stuck in the cave? Well, he wasn't exactly a small guy, he was pretty big, about 6 feet and almost 200 pounds. He got jammed in a very weird position with his head bent at an angle below his feet. He tried to stick himself somewhere his big body clearly didn't fit. And after a desperate rescue attempt, things were looking pretty grim. There was nothing anyone could do except literally watch and speak to John as he slowly died, with the blood rushing to his brain. And all because he thought it would be fun to crawl upside down through a cave. Nutty Putty is now closed to the public and there's been no news of it reopening. Number 5. Death by a peeing contest. A woman died a few years ago during a peeing contest. Yes, a contest about peeing. At the time, it kind of seemed like a good idea. A radio station held a contest calling it Hold Your Wii for a Wii. Whoever could hold their pee the longest was gonna win a free Nintendo Wii system. That was a $250 value at the time. The rules of the contest were that the contestants had to drink as much water as possible without peeing. The last person standing who hadn't peed and who had drank the most water would win. Well, it turned out to be a pretty terrible idea. Jennifer Strange was 28 years old when she entered the competition. Her kids loved video games and she wanted to win the prize for them. But she puked, was disqualified, and went back home. I guess during the contest, Jennifer was complaining of stomach pains and the host chuckled and said, "Is anyone dying in there?" 6 hours later, she dropped dead in her home. Apparently, she had suffered water intoxication. This is almost like alcohol intoxication, but kinda way worse. It happens when too much water enters the blood and dilutes the electrolytes and sodium, resulting in a shutdown of brain function and immediate death. After the incident, the radio station was ordered to pay over $16 million in damages to the family. The radio station could also lose its license altogether. 2 media watchdog groups are challenging the license renewal of the station too. They were seen as liable for the young mother's strange demise. Number 4. Too funny for life. A Greek philosopher was so funny that he died laughing at his own joke. The philosopher, named Chrysippus, was 73 years old at the time of his death. He was born in ancient Turkey and moved to Athens to become a scholar. He lived a long and prosperous life, making a joke so funny that he literally laughed himself into the grave. And are you ready for the joke? Here's what happened. The philosopher saw a donkey eating his figs while at a feast. The philosopher said, "Now give that donkey a pure wine to wash down the figs." So I'm not really sure why that's so funny, but it was so hilarious to him that he laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. He laughed so hard that he hit the floor and began to shake and foam at the mouth. By the time people rushed to his aid, he was already dead. So this may or may not have actually happened. There are historical records of the event, but nobody knows for sure what happened back in 200 BC, because that's over 2,000 years ago. What we do know is that death by laughter is a real thing. Laughing too hard can cause a heart attack, loss of consciousness, or even unexpected asphyxiation. So I guess jokes aren't really so funny now, huh? Number 3. Death by orange peel. Bobby Leach was born in 1858 and was the ultimate daredevil. He was the second person to ever go over Niagara Falls inside of a barrel in 1911. But no, this wasn't the dumb thing that killed him. He did spend 6 months in hospital recovering from injuries including broken kneecaps and a fractured jaw, but he lived all the way to an old age. He returned to Niagara Falls 10 years after his fateful barrel plunge and tried to swim through the whirlpool rapids at the bottom. He failed to make it all the way through, though. However, that didn't kill him either. What killed Bobby Leach was an ordinary orange peel. After a lifetime of daredevil stunts, Bobby went to New Zealand on a publicity tour when he stepped on an orange peel, slipped, and fell on his back and injured his leg. The injury became extremely infected. It got gangrenous, and doctors had to cut the whole leg off. 2 short months later, Bobby died from complications. Everyone was pretty shocked to say the least. After all of those harrowing stunts, it was a slippery orange peel that finally did him in. Number 2. Impaled by reusable straw. A woman in England has been killed by a reusable metal straw. Yes, as ridiculous as that sounds, it's 100% true. Her name was Elena Struthers Gardner. She was 60 years old, and she was walking with an ordinary drinking glass which contained a short stainless steel metal drinking straw. It's important to note that Elena suffered from scoliosis, meaning her spine was curved unnaturally, and this made her clumsy and very prone to falling. When she fell, she was carrying the glass, and when she hit the ground, the metal straw impaled her through the eyeball. She must have landed in such a way that the straw hit the ground and became rigid, turning it into a deadly spike. It stuck through her eye and into her brain, causing an injury that proved immediately fatal. She didn't even know what happened. It was a complete freak accident. The straw went through her eye, into her brain, and she was dead in a second. What's really ironic about this story is that plastic straws have been outlawed in most countries because of their danger to the environment, and a lot of people are replacing them with reusable metal ones. But now it seems the metal straws are a hazard to people, since they can impale your brain. Maybe we should just get rid of straws altogether? I don't know, what do you think? Number 1. Fallen in a vat of soup. In Iraq, a chef cooked himself to death. Yep, it's a little ironic. The incident happened while a man was preparing for a large wedding feast. He had a giant vat filled with chicken soup. He was standing over the soup, stirring it with his ladle, and he didn't have a care in the world. He's a chef after all, cooking is his whole life. But then he slipped, fell into his very own soup, and cooked himself all the way to death. Of course, he didn't die immediately. He was rescued from the vat by a terrified wedding guest. But he wouldn't survive for long. 70% of his body was covered in third-degree burns. He may as well have been trapped inside of a burning building. After 5 days of suffering in the hospital, the chef succumbed to his injuries and passed away quietly. He left behind 3 children, one of them being a 6-month-old baby. As for whether the wedding guests still ate the soup, we can only hope they didn't. Ernie Scherer was a guy with a gambling problem. He also had a bit of a money problem, meaning he was in debt. In order to get rid of his debt, Ernie needed to make some money fast. And so it was that on March 14, 2008, Ernest and Charlene Scherer were discovered dead inside their home where they lived at the Castlewood Country Club in Pleasanton, California. A club employee found the couple after their daughter complained that she hadn't heard from them in over a week. They were supposed to be on their way for a family vacation. When the club employee went to inspect the house, he discovered an overwhelming smell. It was Ernest and Charlene decomposing. He'd been beaten and stabbed, with Charlene's throat sliced up so brutally that her head had almost been cut clean off. Nobody could understand who would commit such a heinous crime. And that brings us back to Ernie. Police soon realized that Ernie had a bit of a gambling problem. He was in debt over $750,000. He was struggling to pay his property taxes and to pay off the loans he had taken to cover his immense gambling losses. The police soon also learned that there was a life insurance policy of $2 million. When the detectives tried to question Ernie, he refused to speak with them. Things got heated really fast. The police secretly recorded his calls until they could finally get enough evidence to arrest him in 2009 in Las Vegas. He was convicted in 2011 and given 2 consecutive life sentences for killing his own parents. Number 9. Losing his wife. In India, a man was arrested after he lost his wife gambling and handed her over like a piece of property to a group of other gamblers in his village. This is some seriously sick stuff. Saroj Kumar is what the police called a habitual gambler. He was hanging out with some friends, losing all the money he had, when for whatever reason, he decided it would be a good idea to place his wife as a bet. He lost that bet, and then he had to hand her over. And this is where things got terrifying for the poor wife. He apparently blindfolded her, gave her over to the gamblers, and let them do whatever they wanted to her. After the traumatic event, the woman went to the police and told them what had happened. However, she was unable to identify the people who had abused her because she was blindfolded the entire time. But she was able to give up her husband, whom she accused of assaulting her after she tried to run away. The woman was taken into police custody, protected. The husband was arrested, and the district superintendent of police told the media that the other people involved would be caught very soon. This has got to be one of the lowest lows that a gambling degenerate has ever devolved to. Number 8. The biggest loser. Terrence Watanabe is considered one of the biggest whales in Las Vegas history. He made a fortune with his trading company and then managed to lose over $120 million in Las Vegas casinos in less than a year. Terrence then got into trouble when he amassed a huge debt with Harrah's Casino, which he never paid back. But this wasn't in the days of the mob. Instead of breaking Terrence's legs, the casino simply took him to court. In 2010, the casino settled the suit with Terrence, but it didn't play out the way they wanted. Terrence accused the casino of allowing him to gamble even after getting too intoxicated to know what he was doing. The court ended up taking Terrence's side. And the casino was fined $225,000 for letting Terrence get too drunk while losing money. But in the end, it didn't really matter for Terrence. He was broke. In 2017, he had to open a GoFundMe fundraiser for his medical issues because he had prostate cancer and needed surgery that was going to cost him $100,000. And he had lost all his money betting at the casino. Unsurprisingly, people weren't that interested in giving a rich guy who lost all his money gambling donations. His campaign only raised $28,000. Number 7. Blackface robbery. A man in Las Vegas has been accused of trying to rob a casino on the Strip while disguising himself using blackface. If that sounds like a pretty poor idea, it's because it is. Cameron James Kennedy was charged after performing an armed stick-up of the casino cage, the area where the tellers keep all the money to exchange for chips. And this was at the New York. According to the Las Vegas police, Kennedy painted his face black to try and make himself look African American, but it didn't really work, as the casino cashier who was robbed told the authorities that he obviously wasn't black. His skin tone didn't look right, and besides, he was very obviously white. Despite the poor taste in his disguise, Kennedy managed to get away with a huge chunk of money after he pulled a handgun out of his waistband and demanded all the hundreds behind the counter. The cashier gave him $23,000, and Kennedy ran out of the casino and fled in a taxi. But like most stupid criminals, Kennedy was quickly apprehended. He went on a bit of a shopping spree, purchasing a gold bracelet and some prepaid debit cards. But the police were tipped off by an anonymous waitress, and they moved in to arrest him. He now faces 20 years in prison for the brazen daylight robbery. Number 6. Threatening the athletes. A sports gambler known for having a short temper and being a high roller was just arrested after sending a string of terrible messages to the athletes he blamed for not doing their jobs and causing him to lose bets. This is the ultimate deflection. Blame the athletes for your own gambling problems. In the gambling community, Benjamin Tucker Pats is also known as Parlay Pats, and he was charged with transmitting threats, which could earn him 5 years in jail according to the federal prosecutor. Here's what we do know about the case. Pats used Instagram to send DMs to football players, basketball players, baseball players, and even a women's soccer player. His threats became so vile and consistent that the FBI had to investigate the case. In 2019, after Pats lost a bet worth $10,000 on a Super Bowl match between the New England Patriots and Los Angeles, he messaged a player from the New England Patriots saying that he would murder his entire family. This was all in capital letters. He went on to say he would enter the player's home while he was asleep and then cut off his head with a dull knife. As you can imagine, the FBI takes this kind of thing really seriously. Pats even wrote one player, "You ruined this game. Now I have no choice but to ruin you." Pats had quite a bit of a temper, and now that very temper will be keeping him behind bars. Number 5. The husband killer. Lois Reese is a murderer. She also had a severe gambling problem, but back in 2018, nobody could have predicted what she was gonna do. She was working at a daycare. She had 3 children and 5 grandchildren, and she and her husband were very social creatures. But then when Lois randomly vanished for 2 weeks and nobody could find her, the police were forced to carry out a welfare check at her home in Minnesota where she lived with her husband. What they found was the rotten corpse of David Reese on the bathroom floor. Lois was nowhere to be found. The couple had been married for 26 years. During the police investigation, they found evidence of habitual gambling. She had stolen $100,000 from her sister to gamble with. Then, right before her husband turned up dead, she had transferred $11,000 from his business account to her personal account. Overnight, Lois went from being a missing person to being a murder suspect. Shortly after Lois went missing, the body of Pamela Hutchinson was discovered inside of a condo at a resort in Florida after workers discovered a foul stench wafting out the front door. Surveillance footage revealed that Lois had been the last one with Hutchinson before she was brutally murdered. The two women looked kinda similar, and so police say Lois killed Hutchinson to steal her identity. She stole her car, withdrew $5,000 from the woman's bank account, and then went on the run again. Luckily, the police caught Lois just before she murdered another woman who looked just like her, named Bernadette Mathis, arresting Lois probably just hours before she committed yet another murder to get more money, and all because she needed some cash to keep on gambling. Number 4. The Lost House. Michelle Singlehurst had a gambling problem that she didn't tell her partner about. After the sale went through of the house that they shared together, she neglected to tell her partner that the money was in her account. Instead, she thought she could use the money to gamble and make even more money. It turned out to be a very bad idea. According to Michelle herself, her troubles started just a little while before betting the money she made selling the house. It started with the online lottery. She got hooked. Bingo games were her favorite, and before she realized what was happening, she was playing bingo in every spare second of her life, often staying up until the early hours of the morning. After losing all her money, she then took out a loan. She borrowed money from friends, and she lost the money made selling the house. The deal went through for nearly $500,000. She gambled away every last penny over the following 5 months, with her partner only finding out about it once the money was gone. He left Michelle, took their daughter with him, and never went back. Michelle then began drinking heavily. Her life was in ruins. And thanks to her gambling addiction, things never really got better. She then contracted hepatitis, overdosed, and had a pretty bad time. Number 3. Life cut short. Susie Zhao was a professional poker player who was recently discovered dead. Her young life was cut short after a man named Jeffrey Bernard Morris got a hold of her in Michigan, abducted the young poker player, and then left her burned corpse in a secluded part of Michigan's Pontiac Lake Recreation Area. The police found Susie bound with zip ties, brutally assaulted and burned alive. It was one of the most horrendous crimes perpetrated in recent memory in the state. But it didn't actually have anything to do with Susie's gambling. She just so happened to have earned nearly $200,000 playing poker professionally at the World Series, then was in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to the local police, there was no direct motive other than Morris being a deviant piece of human trash with a rap sheet that goes all the way back to 1989. Ever since then, Morris has been charged with heaps of criminal sexual misconduct, but always let out of jail after a few weeks or months. But hopefully now he'll be locked up for good. Number 2. Loan shark fail. Police in Macau, the Las Vegas of China, recently discovered a man dead inside his guest house, beaten to death. This was a case you'd expect to have seen back in Vegas in the 50s. The man had an outstanding gambling debt to local loan sharks. But how much was the debt? It was only $6,373, but apparently that was enough for the loan sharks to break into this guy's guest house, then use belts and slippers to beat him into submission. Police said that they gagged the man so that he couldn't call for help, though they couldn't release an exact cause of death. They did say that the attack was videotaped, with the cell phone footage sent to the family of the victim telling them to hurry and pay or else. Well, the or else happened anyway. They beat the guy so mercilessly that he never got up again. And considering these loan sharks are undoubtedly involved with organized crime, they won't be captured. In China, Macau really is like the Wild West. It's the biggest gambling hub in the world, significantly larger than Las Vegas, with casinos raking in an estimated $37.8 billion per year. Number 1. Losing it all. An Australian gambler may just be the biggest loser in the entire world. A property developer named Harry Kakavas on the Gold Coast was one of the wealthiest high rollers who hung out at the Crown Casino in Melbourne. Now Harry's trying to sue them to reclaim some of his losses. He says the casino took advantage of his unique disability. So here's how much money Harry lost. $1.5 billion in Australian dollars, which is fairly close to US dollars. He lost most of the money playing baccarat, often losing up to $146 million in a single session that didn't last for more than a handful of hours. The legal team representing Harry has claimed that the casino took advantage of his pathological gambling disability. Of course, that's not a real thing, and the Australian High Court has rejected any bid for Harry to get his money back. He whined that on one occasion, the casino even drove him to the bank so he could withdraw $1 million. But really, that's still his own fault. Harry's just sour because he lost a billion-dollar fortune impulsively gambling. A California woman named Abdullah Sanchez was just 18 years old when she killed her sister while live streaming on Instagram. This is arguably the most infamous live stream murder case ever. At the time, Sanchez's sister was only 14 years old. It began when Sanchez got behind the wheel of an old Buick while intoxicated, then filmed her and her sister driving down the road live for all her viewers and eventually the world to see. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Sanchez wasn't really paying attention to the road. She ended up veering into the wrong lane and causing the deadly accident that ultimately killed her sister. Because Sanchez was drunk during the crash, she was charged with gross vehicular manslaughter. She was given 6 years in jail for the crime. However, she probably wouldn't have gotten in so much trouble if she hadn't gotten out of the vehicle after the crash and continued live streaming. For the whole world to see, she recorded her dead sister's mangled corpse. You can hear her in the video saying, "I effing killed my sister, okay? I know I'm going to jail for life. This is the last thing I wanted to happen, okay? I don't effing care though, I'm gonna hold it down. Rest in peace, sweetie. If you don't survive, I'm so effing angry." She didn't really seem to have emotion or remorse about the fact that she literally killed her sister on Instagram in court though. Sanchez's story didn't end up with her going to jail though. The murder happened in 2017, and even though she was supposed to spend 6 years in prison, she was released early on parole in 2019. 26 days after being released, Sanchez led police on a hot pursuit, blowing through stop signs and red lights, before eventually running off the road and being apprehended by the police who found her with a loaded gun. Now she's going back to prison where she should probably stay put for good before she hurts anyone else. Number 9. Set on fire. In a horrific live stream accident, Brianna Jungwirth set herself on fire. It happened during the coronavirus lockdown when she was just hanging out with a friend, live streaming their fun life and playing with a candle. Brianna is the ex of Louis Tomlinson, the former singer of One Direction. While she was busy catching on fire on livestream, their baby was apparently in the other room. Her sweater touched the candle flame and immediately ignited. There were a few horrifying seconds in which Brianna shrieked and flailed while literally on fire. However, the fire wasn't that big. She managed to get the sweater off and extinguish the flames, though she was pretty close to suffering some serious burns. Even after the fire was out, she kept messing around with the candle. She was accused by fans online of being reckless and nearly burning her house down, with her and her baby inside of it. Number 8. Test positive. A woman in Florida got into some trouble after live streaming herself in public infected with the coronavirus. According to the Stewart Police Department, Melissa Barton Schmidt tested positive for COVID-19, then decided she would go for a walk through the downtown core while streaming on Facebook Live. Her audacity was really something. While literally strolling past hundreds of people in public, she discussed live how she had gotten tested for COVID-19. And although she didn't get the results yet, she was pretty sure she was infected. It's not exactly clear what she was thinking, but it really came back to bite her in the rear end. As she preached how people should remain inside and stay safe, she herself was roaming outside, potentially infecting people. Somebody who was watching the live broadcast complained to the police, who immediately went to the area and tracked her down. When confronted by the cops, Melissa became agitated and caused quite a disturbance. She caused such a disturbance that the police arrested her on the spot, charged her with disorderly conduct along with violating Florida's quarantine order. Number 7. FORTNITE wife-beater. A streamer on Twitch was arrested by police in Australia after doing something horrific on his live stream. The streamer's name online was Mr. Deadmoth, and while he was playing Fortnite, he took a quick break to beat up on his wife. This was a huge shock to the people watching. At first, they thought it was kind of funny that he was arguing with his wife. She wanted him to stop playing the game, was throwing things at him and getting angry. Well, the comedy stopped when the streamer got angry too. He yelled profanities at his wife, and then after she threw a cardboard box at his head, he got up from his chair, vanished off screen, and the people watching his live stream heard a loud slap of skin on skin. Seconds later, the woman could be heard screaming, and a child somewhere in the room was crying. The streamer could be heard saying, "How many times do I have to tell you?" Well, this guy's streaming career ended that very second. His wife said that she was pregnant, and he was beating up on her off camera. After the incident, he deleted all of his accounts, including Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. But that didn't stop people from reporting him. And soon after he slapped his wife, the New South Wales police arrested him and charged him with assault. Number 6. Ticking bomb. Jamal Haraz was live streaming in public when he learned a very valuable lesson, that you should never trust your viewers to take things seriously. He was in a public forum when he allowed his viewers to play any noise they wanted through his speakers for a small donation. This was a terrible mistake because soon after he let his viewers have use of his speaker, somebody donated a little bit of money and then played the sound of a ticking bomb. It's important to note at this point that the live streamer was an Arab guy with a beard. When people heard the ticking bomb, they took one look at him and ran away screaming for their lives. It was complete pandemonium, and even after Haraz fled the scene, the police managed to track him down and arrest him. He was charged with threatening to bomb the property and is now being treated like a terrorist, even though he obviously isn't one. He's also facing up to 10 years in prison for what happened. So what do you think the outcome of this particular situation should be? Should he have to go to jail? Do you think he deserves any kind of punishment? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. The Long Drive. This particular case didn't happen on a live stream for the world to see, but it happened due to a live stream. A 23-year-old man drove 1,700 miles from Texas to California to murder a gaming streamer 5 years younger than him. Matthew Thane was shot and killed outside his own home at around 6 o'clock in the morning, according to the Flower Mound Police Department in Texas. The suspect set fire to a propane tank outside Matthew's house to lure him out into the open. Once outside, the suspect walked up and shot him dead. While an official motive was never released by police, it's believed the suspect and Matthew met through the online forum Twitch and had a dispute possibly through the game Call of Duty. Matthew played the Call of Duty game live, and apparently he managed to offend the suspect, who has not been named, to such an extent that the guy left his home in Texas, drove to California, shot Matthew dead, and then drove back home. After a short standoff with police, the suspect was dragged dead out of his house, shot in the head. He took his own life before police could arrest him. Nobody knows what exactly caused the suspect to get so angry, but it was obviously enough for both youngsters to wind up in the grave. Number 4. Throw the cat. Natalia Mogollon has over 892,000 followers on Twitch. She's a very popular gaming streamer. However, she recently got into a bit of a controversy after she threw her cat across the room. Before this incident, she also came under fire for admitting that she married a Canadian man to move from her home country of Colombia to Canada. And then she divorced him. But back to the cat. People are concerned about her animals. She was recorded grabbing her cat and tossing it over her head in the most violent way possible. People were so disturbed by her treatment of the poor cat that they reported her for animal cruelty. She tweeted an apology. "Hey everyone, I understand the concern and I'm sorry for my lapse in judgment. I shouldn't have gotten frustrated with Milo, but I dropped him on the floor behind my chair. I'm not that strong. The vodka thing was well over a year ago, but it was also a stupid thing to do." The Saskatoon Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals even got involved and launched an investigation. But seeing as she's stinking rich and wildly popular, she'll probably just get a fine. But still, Natalia, be nice to your pets. Number 3. Disowned. A Twitch streamer known as Tessie was rising in popularity when she made a very horrible mistake. While live streaming, she insulted a cancer patient. Yes, it sounds awful because it is awful. It happened when she got into an argument with a random girl who happened to have cancer. Tessie personally attacked the girl because she was wearing a wig due to her leukemia, ridiculing her wig and calling her a cancer loser. It wasn't just a quick comment either, it was multiple comments, and the bullying went on for over a minute. And while the online world didn't seem to care that much, Tessie's father certainly did. In a really weird twist, Tessie's father went online and ousted his daughter, telling people that she live-streamed herself doing drugs and then got arrested, and that she's seen several psychologists, but sadly they were never able to actually help her. He then apparently kicked her out of his house, and all because the streamer couldn't help but make fun of somebody with cancer. Last we heard, she's not very popular anymore and has resorted to trying to make money with OnlyFans. Number 2. Robbed at gunpoint. In South Africa in June of 2021, a live streamer was in the middle of playing a heated match of Call of Duty Warzone with her family when 3 intruders burst into their room and robbed them live. The incident took place in the Amberfield Valley estate, with the streamer, Miss Brandit, and her husband and their 2 sons being the victims of the violent attack. The entire thing was captured on her webcam, and the video is still floating around for curious people to watch. The intruders kicked down the door, forced everybody to get on the floor and remain calm, and then they ransacked the house. Miss Brandit later confirmed that one of the 3 intruders was carrying a firearm, citing, "One of the intruders grabbed my headset and I turned around only to face a man with a firearm. They told us to get down on the floor and remain calm. They took the cell phones, the TV, their laptops, and all their electronic gear. They also stole the family car. The people who were watching the stream were helpless as Miss Brandit and her family were robbed blind. The lucky thing here is that nobody was hurt. Last we heard, no arrests had been made even though at least one of the attackers showed his face on the webcam." Number 1. Attacked by a bird. Moving over to Australia, a streamer has been a victim of a less brutal type of attack. While the streamer was playing Valorant and streaming with his friends, he was attacked by a violent bird. It was a magpie, a very common nuisance in Australia known for violently attacking people. He was sitting in his chair in his house when the bird flew in through an open door. He didn't notice it at first, but his viewers sure did. The bird was in the background, hopping around and inspecting the pet dishes. It was obviously looking for food or water, and when it didn't find any, it attacked the streamer in anger. There was immediate panic in the room. The streamer screamed and swatted at the bird, yelling at it to go away, but it just wouldn't listen. He couldn't even get it out of the house because the bird couldn't seem to find the doorway again. The bird knocked his headphones off and tried to peck out his eyes. But after quite the struggle, the bird finally flew out the door and the streamer could get back to his business. The 1970s were a strange time, with civil rights rallies, environmental movements, presidential scandals, and fear of nuclear war. Most people were just trying to get through the days, but the average consumer was missing something. And Liz Carmichael knew just what they needed. The fuel crisis of 1974 led to a consumer need for more energy-efficient vehicle options. Enter the Dale, a cheap, efficient, stylish three-wheeled car. Sounds too good to be true? Well, you're absolutely right, it was a giant hoax. After receiving $30 million investment dollars, close to $200 million today, Carmichael was planning on revolutionizing the vehicle industry. Little did investors know Carmichael had an interesting past. She was born as Jerry Dean Michael, who just so happened to be on the run from feds for charges relating to counterfeiting. Liz was a tried and true con artist that got national attention for her biggest con yet. She got the 20th Century Motor Car Company involved and quickly began advertising. Some of the taglines called it the most exciting new car of this century, the first space-aged automobile, even describing it as designed and built like it was ready to be driven to the moon. These were some pretty far-out claims for an equally far-out looking vehicle. Liz claimed that they would sell over 200,000 models, but here's the catch you've been waiting for. They only ever made one prototype. The neon yellow car was full of motorcycle parts with no steering wheel mechanism, gas pedals, or suitable motor. The only motor in it came from a lawnmower. The futuristic Dale couldn't even go 30 miles an hour, let alone drive to the moon. It was a car sold on a dream, but once the nightmarish truth got out, millions of investor dollars were lost, and Carmichael was sent to prison. Number 8. Real-life war dogs. Did you know the hit film War Dogs was based on a true story? Ephraim Diavoli was 19 years old while owning the AEY Inc. arms company. At the age of 23, David Mordecai Pacquiao joined the company, and by 2006 they had amassed over 149 contracts. A year later, the pair landed a massive deal with the US government. For $300 million, AYE was to supply the Afghan army with millions of AK-47 rounds along with rockets and other heavy artillery. According to the contract with the US, Pacquiao and Diavoli were supposed to get the weaponry from Albania, but they actually got it from China, which was a direct violation of the original agreement. It was especially bad because the US bans all Chinese ammunition. The man actively covered up the fact that the rounds were created in China by removing the Chinese markings on all of the gun crates. After discovering the scam, the US did not take the axe lightly and charged the two with fraud. Diavoli was sent to prison for 4 years on account of conspiracy to defraud the United States, and Pacquiao was given 7 months of house arrest. Number 7. Fire Festival. In 2007, the ultimate party for the ultra-rich and celebrity elite was advertised, with tickets costing up to $100,000 a piece and promotions from well-known socialites like Kendall Jenner and Hailey Baldwin. The Fire Festival was supposed to be the party of the century. Guests were promised luxury accommodations with gourmet meals, celebrity interactions, and a true island getaway. Over 5,000 people bought tickets, racking up over $26 million in sales. Once arriving for the exciting experience in the Bahamas, festival-goers were shocked at what awaited them. Cheese sandwiches and to-go boxes, small tents with soaking wet mattresses and outhouses, hardly the luxury experience people were hoping for. High-profile artists were on the docket to perform, but many, like Blink-182, pulled out shortly before due to how sketchy the event seemed. The man behind it all was Billy McFarland. For his crimes against partiers, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison and had to give back the $26 million. Hulu and Netflix have both published documentaries about the massive festival scam, and it's hard to believe the festival's organizers thought they could just whip up a luxury experience in a few months when it should have taken over a year. Number 6. COVID relief money scam. 2020 was really a year for the history books. COVID-19 came out of nowhere and hit everyone off guard, ruining plans and forcing us to stay indoors. No one could have predicted or successfully prepared for it. It was in this year that scammers took advantage of the chaos and fear surrounding the virus and stole over $4.2 billion from individuals across the country. Comparatively, over the course of 2017 and all the way through 2019, a total of $7.6 billion was taken from unsuspecting victims. The news of 2020's record was released in the Internet Crime Report from the FBI this March. It's estimated that the $4.2 billion figure is just a rough estimate, since it's highly likely that many of the people that got scammed were too embarrassed to admit what happened. A Facebook group created for scam victims with over 700 members did a survey that showed almost 75% of people were too ashamed to file a report. The scammers had multiple methods of getting what they wanted. Many would make fake profiles on social media sites like Facebook and Instagram, some even going on dating sites or apps for games. Using these personas, they would innocently start a conversation with their mark with a pre-written script, meticulously crafted to trick gullible victims. After forming some kind of connection, the scammer would make up an excuse for why they needed money. Whether it was issues after losing their job during COVID or fraudulent medical problems, the people they were targeting felt bad for their new friend and would often send money to help. In California, 69,000 people fell for these tricks. It's unfortunate that someone would take advantage of people during such a vulnerable time, and it's even more sad that they were so successful in doing so. Just remember, the next time someone you don't know reaches out to you on social sites, don't become a victim. Did you ever get a message on Facebook from someone trying to scam you? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Scott Rothstein. Everyone has heard of or at least joked about those mega rich businessmen who fly exclusively on private jets to their 16th vacation home on a private island off the coast of France. Well, Scott Rothstein was one of those men, and he got his money by scamming others in the wealthy elite. Rothstein was a lawyer, as well as a shareholder and the CEO of the Rothstein Rosenfeld Alder law firm. In 2009, it was discovered that he, along with some of the other higher-ups in the firm, were guilty of involvement in a $1.2 billion Ponzi scheme. In case you don't know, a Ponzi scheme is a type of scam that tricks investors into putting money into a project. Little do they know their money isn't going to go to the intended project, but instead it's going into the pockets of early investors. While the early investors think the money is coming from the project, it's actually coming from the new funds, and the cycle just keeps on repeating. Eventually, the FBI caught on to what Rothstein was doing, and they issued a search warrant for the law firm's offices in Fort Lauderdale during November of 2009. Spooked by the feds, Rothstein fled to Casablanca with $16 million. Talk about a lavish getaway. He was either overcome with guilt or too scared of what the police might do to him that he wrote a suicide message to his partners. Thankfully, they were able to talk him out of the deed, and justice was served. Finally, on June 9th of 2010, Scott received his prison sentence of 50 years in prison. It just goes to show that some mega-rich people will get their hands dirty for money. Number 4. James Paul Lewis Jr. In 2004, a 57-year-old California man by the name of James Paul Lewis Jr. scammed investors out of $814 million. Putting on a front as an investment advisor, James would trick his clients into investing in certain businesses, while really he was just taking their money in an elaborate Ponzi scheme. He owned a large investment firm called the Orange County Firm Financial Advisory Consultants that was inevitably shut down due to his crimes. Lewis had been scamming his trusting clients for over 20 years, with over 5,200 in his criminal career. It wasn't until December 22nd of 2004 that the FBI raided his office, only to find $2.3 out of the $814 million he was supposed to have on hand for his clients, many of whom were elderly and needed the money to get through their final years of life. The FBI found that Lewis had sent some of the money overseas and traded it into foreign currency while also using it to buy luxury cars, fancy homes, and more. For his crimes, U.S. District Judge Cormac Carney sentenced Lewis to serve a maximum sentence possible of 30 years and ordered him to pay back $156 million in restitution. To this day, Lewis serves his prison sentence, but only 11 of that $156 million has been recovered. Number 3. Credit card scams. Scammers have been tricking people for years and know exactly how to get what they want. Ever since credit cards first rolled out decades ago, hackers and scammers have found ways to make money off of innocent victims. Collectively, billions of dollars have been stolen. But how do they do it, you might ask? How could some people be so gullible and just give their credit card information out to strangers? Well, they use multiple methods to trick cardholders. Many times it starts with a simple phone call. You've probably gotten one or maybe 1,000 calls asking about your car's extended warranty, how you owe money to the IRS, and there's a warrant out for your arrest, or maybe there's reduced insurance rates in your area. You probably hang up as soon as you hear that robotic voice, but some people, most often older people and less technologically savvy adults, well, they keep listening. These types of scams are known as phishing schemes and can lead to money being stolen off of cards or even entirely new credit cards being opened in the target's name. This can often lead down a slippery slope to identity theft. It's easier than you think to become a victim of a credit card scam. Scammers use multiple avenues to try and take your money, whether it be through phone calls, emails, social media, and more. You should always be careful with your credit card information. Number 2. Gift cards. Gift cards are the unspoken favorite Christmas and birthday present that everyone wants because after getting one, you can buy whatever you want with it. And so can scammers. They want them too. The only difference is they want you to pay for them. If you've ever worked a retail job at a store that sells these coveted cards, then you probably know where we're going with this. In 2020, the Better Business Bureau reported almost $3 million stolen due to gift card scams. There's an average of $700 out of pocket of each victim. This number is probably much higher since less than 10% of those tricked filed an incident report. Similar to the credit card schemes, perpetrators often call their victims saying that they're going to be arrested immediately unless a certain amount of money is given on a Visa gift card or that they've won the lottery but must pay a certain amount before receiving the jackpot. They then ask for the numbers on the back of the card and make their getaway without a trace. Sadly, most gift cards can't be returned once they're purchased, so there's almost no way for victims to get their money back after realizing they've been tricked. Sadly, the elderly are the ones most commonly fooled, with over 66% of those being women. It's been found that the most bought gift cards in these scams include ones for Google Play, Target, Amazon, eBay, and iTunes. In Canada, one of the top gift cards used for theft is a Steam card, mainly used for online gaming. The issue has gotten so bad that retail employees are now trained to recognize the signs of a gift card scam, even though it's very difficult to tell someone they've been tricked once they've convinced themselves otherwise. So next time you buy a gift card for someone else, ask yourself if you can really trust that person. Number 1. Reed Slatkin. The early 2000s seemed to be a massively popular time for Ponzi schemes, one of which conducted by a man known as Reed E. Slatkin, who stole over $500 million from investors. He claimed the only reason he committed the crimes was because he was under threat. Slatkin was a member of the famed Church of Scientology, who he said were threatening him to trick investors so the church could profit, but the church adamantly denied such claims. It's no secret, though, that the church was a major part of Slatkin's life. He was converted at an early age during a rocky period in his life right after the death of his father. Practically growing up in the church, it wouldn't be a surprise if his claims of harassment for donations turned out to be true. The church was never seen at fault, though, since there was no evidence of involvement. As part of a sentencing deal, Slatkin assisted investors in taking down and uncovering the depths of the scheme. But Judge Morrow said his help was somewhat sketchy, since he would often wait until hints of evidence were found before admitting anything, indicating that there could be more he was hiding. Eventually, he was given a 14-year prison sentence. One of his victims, John Poitras, said this sentence was an absolute insult to the victims, since he and many of his friends lost life savings in the scam. Along with the multiple-year sentence, Slatkin was ordered to pay back $240 million to his victims. Thanks for watching. Which of these scams surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.